And we have the audio sound bites that are all coming up. We have the predicted, and it frankly wasn't hard. I mean, I would love to take credit for brilliance on this, but, you know, a sand flea could have predicted what the Democrats and the media were going to do in reaction to the retirement announcement of Justice Kennedy. Of course, Trump has thrown gasoline on all this by saying, I'm honored that Kennedy said he felt comfortable enough to retire with me as president. That has just sent them into orbit. We got all kinds of great stuff coming up here today, folks. Great to have you with us. The telephone number is 800-282-2882 and the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. I want to start. You probably think I'm going to start with my prediction from yesterday, and I'm not, because it's coming very soon. I want to talk about something a little bit more overarching than that. What happened yesterday that has caused a meltdown all over the left? Jeffrey Toobin was on CNN. Oh, no. Oh, no. Roe versus Wade is doomed. Oh, my God. Babies are going to live. Oh, no. What can cause this? Well, that's what happens. If the baby's not aborted, it lives. I'm sorry if this is offensive. Take it up with God, not me. I got nothing to do with it. But if a baby's not aborted, it lives, and here's Jeffrey Toobin. Oh, no, Roe versus Wade is doomed. An 82-year-old judge. One man. We have a population of 300-some-odd million, and one 82-year-old, could have been 32, doesn't matter. I'm just giving you the factual content here, has announced that he is retiring and heading off to that great cloakroom wherever he goes after he retires. And look at the absolute meltdown that has taken place over a single individual saying he's leaving. Now, what can possibly justify this kind of meltdown? We have three branches of government. We have the legislative, we have the executive, and we have the judiciary. You'd be amazed at how many people think that the branches of government are president and vice president and speaker of the House. It's a shame. But we have the legislative, we have the executive, and we have the judiciary. And they are co-equal. And they always, it's been set up as founded that they battle for power. And the battle for power is supposed to slow things down. Change is supposed to occur at a snail's pace in this country, as designed by our brilliant founders, for the express purpose of taking emotional reactions out of everything. But yet that's all we're dealing with now. The left is entirely gone every day. How much of emotion is left in their reservoir? Do you realize every day is a panic and a crisis to everybody on the left? Every day. So now an 82-year-old guy, Justice Anthony Kennedy, has said, did you see this, a Comedy Central writer who said he wished Judge Kennedy had been shot instead of President Kennedy and instead of Robert Kennedy? Comedy, this is a comedy network. This is where you tune in to laugh, and you tune in and some loco weed. Yeah, I wish Anthony Kennedy had been the one shot instead of John Kennedy. What? You want to throw out all the great rulings you got from Anthony Kennedy? How these people can even marshal 30% of support from people in this country is beyond me now. It's not that if it doesn't appear. A lot of people watch Comedy Central. People tuning in to watch it. How in the world do you not blanch at that? Just the stupidity of it, much less the coarseness. They call Trump uncivil, and they say Trump is dangerous to our discourse and so forth. So back to the three branches, the executive, legislative, and executive. And if I were a member of Congress today, if I'm in the House and Senate, and one judge announces he's quitting and everybody acts like it's the end of whatever they believe in, I'd be asking myself, well, what am I, chopped liver here? Is the Congress chopped liver? Is everything deferred to the Supreme Court? And yes, it is. And the reason for that is the left. I mean, you could go back to Marbury versus Madison, where the Supreme Court said, you know what? We are going to decide what's constitutional or not. Or you could go back to Earl Warren and his court 60 years ago, where they affirmed that they were going to sit in judgment they were going to be the final authority. This was never what the Supreme Court was intended to be, the final authority. But the left insisted on it because the judiciary is their backup for losing elections. Why should a Supreme Court justice, how has it happened the Supreme One is so powerful when all they are supposed to do is to decide the law, whether a law is constitutional, whether the cases that come before them, they decide cases, and not every one of them is a constitutional case. But we have invested in the Supreme Court as the final authority. But the left did that. When the Supreme Court trends to not giving them the final result they want, you think they're just going to sit there and accept it? They don't accept anywhere else in our society where they lose. You think they're just going to sit there and accept if they lose at the Supreme Court? That's not who they are. They will continue to agitate and try for more and more upheaval. But what it really means is that the executive branch, legislative branch, have kind of ceded power. They've let it happen. They've let it happen. And 9 people in robes have the final authority on all of it when they're not supposed to do that because they're not elected. They're not representatives of the people. They're appointed by the president, confirmed by the people of the Senate, so forth, but they are not elected, and therefore they have no direct link to the people. And our country is a representative republic, and the people that we elect to the House and the Senate are there to represent us. I know they're supposed to be, judges are supposed to be totally free of bias and all that. Of course, that's a myth as well. I find it fascinating to watch the reaction when one judge decides to retire and what it says about what has happened to our country and where it's. Look at this tweet from Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman. Why do we even care what Morgan Freeman says? Well, because he's played God in movies. And that's why. Because Morgan Freeman is perceived to be a person, because of the way he looks, to be authoritative and fair and brilliant and smart. Well, let me ask you, there's a tweet here. It's days like this from yesterday's, days like today, where I am infuriated the Democrat National Committee rigged its nomination for Hillary Clinton. Wait, what? They know this happened? They know that Hillary didn't win over Crazy Bernie fairly? They know that the DNC rigged and they're mad at Trump? And they're mad at the Russians? They know that there was collusion? Amazing. His tweet continues, Bernie had the momentum, Bernie had the message, but forcing Hillary because it was her turn might be the biggest mistake of our lives. Wait a minute. It's now understandable that Trump won? It now makes sense that Trump won? Morgan Freeman, who has played God in movies, is suggesting to us that they knew all along that Hillary was bad news, and that it's not a big surprise that Trump won because Hillary is such bad news. And because Hillary was such bad news and got defeated by Trump, that's why Kennedy's retiring. Judge Napolitano, the human Eddie Munster, Judge Knapp's Fox News says that the late Justice Antonin Scalia told him that Kennedy told Scalia that he wasn't going to retire until there was a Republican president. Okay, we have a Republican president. Kennedy is retiring. He must be okay with Trump. That's got him spinning in tops as well. And it is, I have to tell you, it's fun to watch this, frankly. I mean, I've gotten a little bit beyond where this stuff irritates. I mean, it does. But I now see the humor in a lot of this because we're dealing with I mean, closed-minded, sheer stupidity. Yeah, Comedy Central writer, I wish Justice Kennedy had been shot instead of JFK or Robert. What's this clown's name? Curtis Cook, a Los Angeles-based writer for Comedy Central. You think they're rethinking, like, is this funny? Oh, and Trevor Noah, who also works there, he had something crazy to say. In some ways, it feels like all hope is dead. So you're tuning into the Comedy Central network to watch what you think is Jon Stewart. He got out of there long ago. He could see what's coming. His replacement, where you go to laugh, has just told you that all hope is dead. Why? Because a judge retired. So the investment they have made in the Supreme Court becoming the final arbiter, it was always destined to come back and bite them. It's going to come back and bite everybody on both sides, depending on rulings. And Dan Rather also tweeted out. Now, Dan Rather, of course, is a newsman. He was the anchor for CBS Evening News after Walter Klondike retired. And Dan Rather eventually had to retire himself because he got caught making up the news about George W. Bush and the National Guards. I mean, he actually used forged documents. His excuse, well, maybe the documents are forged, but the story is accurate. Right. My source material may be fake, but the story is real. Anyway, they get rid of Rather at CBS. I've got no choice. Peter Jennings and Tom Brokaw, immediately recognizing the potential danger here to all of journalism, create a new award, the Lifetime Award for Great News Present or some such thing, and they have a big dinner, and they give Rather the award to save liberalism and to save the news business. So Rather tweeted yesterday afternoon, Justice Kennedy retiring. If you're deeply disturbed, absorb the shock, but respond with even more determination. If you see this as a fight for the future of democracy, let those in power know that the will of the majority can still hold sway. Earth to Dan, this is the majority holding sway. Trump won the election. The Republicans won the House. The Republicans won the Senate. They get to choose because they are the majority. Just like people have forgotten. I think Obama nominated Elena Kagan, perhaps one of the least qualified people to sit on any court, much less the Supreme Court. He nominated her during the year of a midterm election. And nobody said he shouldn't have been able to do it. Nobody said he should have to wait till after the election. When Obama nominated somebody to the court, most people say, okay, first African-American president, whatever you want, you can have it. We're not racist. And that's how much of the Obama years happened. There was no opposition to it. Now, I have a question for Dan Rather. If you're deeply disturbed, absorb the shock. Can you tell them how to do it, Dan? Because it doesn't look like they know. Morgan Freeman is not absorbing the shock. The Comedy Central guy who wishes that Anthony Kennedy had been shot instead of President Kennedy, I think they're having trouble absorbing the shock. You've been through this, Dan. How do they do it? Second thing is respond with even more determination. What's that? What, will you explain this? Respond with more determination to do what? What does that look like, Dan? What does responding with more determination look like? I mean, just asking, what would it be? What are these people not doing that Dan thinks they need to do? Well, they're not absorbing the shock. And I don't know how they could be more determined. Competent and qualified to figure all this out and to oppose it's another thing, but I think they are determined. So there's that. And my prediction yesterday has already come true. It came true much as I thought it would before the end of the day yesterday, and it has come true over and over and over again throughout the drive-by media. So we'll have the audio evidence of all of that coming up when we get back. This tweet, it's days like today where I'm infuriated that Democrats rigged the nomination for Hillary. Bernie had a momentum, Bernie had the message, but forcing Hillary because it was her turn might be the biggest mistake of our lives. It's a different Morgan Freeman. It's not Morgan Freeman, the actor. Coco, up at the website, went to find the tweet to be able to link to it and found out it's some loco weed that likes Colin Kaepernick. Morgan J. Freeman. And it is even his... Not the Me Too actor, not the guy that played God. No, it's not the actor. In fact, this Morgan Freeman is African-American, which, of course, a strike against him, being a Democrat, white privilege and all. Ask Joe Crowley about that. Does it feel like, does what feel like win? Are you, Mr. Snerdley is asking, these last, does it feel like winning? Well, cautiously, yeah, it feels like, of course it does. These are huge decisions. Are you telling me this doesn't feel like winning to you? Snerdley, I'll tell you what's nagging at you. Snerdley, does this feel like winning? Yeah, it is. There's no question this is winning. The union case, there's no question. The Kennedy retirement, we won't know if this is a win until we see who Trump nominates, until the guy gets confirmed. Some of the other things, but Snerdley is something is gnawing at me. I've had a lot of emails from people. We even had a call yesterday from somebody who's worried. What if Mueller comes in and says that Trump and Putin conspired and has evidence of it? Do you realize, Russia, it's all over? Is that something you're worried about, Mr. Snerdley? That Mueller's got something? I think a little bit of that too. Well, I think if you are feeling restrained in your celebratory nature here, it's simple. All right, fine, stay that way. I think all you're reacting to is a lifetime of us taking it on the chin no matter what happens. You're so used to us losing. You're so used to feeling really good about something, and then the left pulls a sneak attack from out of nowhere that nullifies it all. You're reacting to a bunch of conditioning. But I think you need to temper that with the fact that this is not your average Republican president. This is all new. This kind of stuff has not happened before in our lifetimes. Closest to it is Ronaldus Magnus. Do you know that even Ronald Reagan at no point in his presidency had a approval rating as high as 90% of all Republicans? Donald Trump does. At no point during the Reagan presidency did 70% of the American people say they think the news is literally made up. So I think feeling restrained and not wanting to let go and act like celebrating here is, it's wise because these are temporary steps along the way, but it's also the result of a lifetime of doing that and then having to dial it back because something's come along, a Republican is betrayed or any number of things. But yeah, I'm feeling really, really good about all this. These Supreme Court decisions this week, I'll tell you why I feel good about those. I think in each of these 5-4 decisions, as I said yesterday, I think the court is reestablishing the primacy of the Constitution, not Donald Trump. All of these judges that have issued these executive orders trying to stop Trump's lawful, or these stays of execution, not execute. Well, yeah, it could be that, but they've stayed Trump's executive orders, and the court's basically telling him, you don't have the power to do this. A single federal judge cannot stop a lawful executive order of the president. So the court here is standing up for the Constitution. That's a positive thing whenever that happens. But I don't think you can take Trump out of the equation. So we'll see what other people have to say about it on the what is there something specific in this that's making you feel less than celebratory about this? Or is it just an overall feeling of unease? You're not answering. So feeling uneasy about it. I think it's just conditioning. I think it's habitual. I think it's what you're used to. You know, it's driven by, it's your intelligence guided by experience that is wisely causing you to restrain yourself until something actually is etched in stone. Well, these court decisions are. Look, let's move on with my prediction yesterday. Let's replay it. Shortly after the Kennedy retirement was announced, I predicted this. I think you can make book on the fact that the Democrats and the drive-bys are going to argue that Trump cannot be permitted to nominate a Supreme Court justice until we hear from Bob Mueller. Until Trump is cleared of all wrongdoing, he should not be permitted to name a Supreme Court justice, because it's entirely possible, they will say, that Trump is going to be indicted for colluding with Putin to steal the election from Hillary, making any Supreme Court nomination illegitimate and illegal. Make book on it. Some variation of that is going to be stated, is going to be uttered by somebody out there on the left. It didn't take long for your host to be proven correct. The first example of it is a Breitbart story. The headline, Will and Grace star Deborah Messing after Justice Kennedy retirement. Get ready, the fight is on. And then she said, we must vote, we must make calls, knock on doors, help candidates who are looking to flip seats. We must call our members of Congress and tell them that every Democrat must refuse to hold a hearing for Trump's nominee until after the Russia probe is concluded. Now, I know she's an actress, but it still happened. She's a leftist, and it was stated exactly as I knew it would be. Audio sound bites. We have a montage of drive-by media specialists coming out of the woodwork saying that Trump should not get a nomination to the court until the Mueller impeachment is over.
2 words, Robert Mueller. This president making this nomination, by the way, is under investigation.
The Supreme Court may have a role in the Mueller investigation. Stay tuned.
Let's say Mueller has new things that come out.
Whatever Robert Mueller finds will eventually find its way to the Supreme Court. And that is going to be another factor here.
A subpoena case is very likely involving Donald Trump to go to the United States Supreme Court.
The president is under a cloud. A president who is under investigation. We should pause for that reason.
Mind that, but how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. 7 basically came out and confirmed my prediction. Some of them even going so far as to say that Mueller's going to come out, he's going to indict Trump, and it's all going to end up in the Supreme Court. We can't have Trump-appointed judges up there deciding. That's a conflict, except for the fact that Gorsuch is already there. Then this morning on CBS This Morning, Norah O'Donnell announced breaking news about Trump's upcoming summit with Vladimir Putin, and she introduced Chief White House Correspondent Major Garrett's report about the summit. She said, we actually have some breaking news coming right now from the White House, which just announced details of the president's upcoming summit with Putin. Major Garrett at the White House with details, and everybody is on the seat of their pants for this.
2 key details, Nora. July 16th, that's the date, the location. Helsinki, Finland. The announcement coming in coordination, this White House and the Kremlin hitting send, if you will, on the paper statement, simultaneously announcing it to the world.
Collusion. Trump and Putin colluded to have a summit. Breaking news, CBS. Trump and Putin hit the send button at the same time. Collusion to have a summit. Could there be any other reason for this collusion, for this summit, than to dissuade everybody that there was prior collusion on the election? This is what they're all thinking. While you digest all that, we take another obscene profit timeout. Your phone calls are coming up pretty soon, too, so hang on. It obviously makes sense. Somewhere in the drive-by media, there will be an analysis of what America's real anchorman, me, has to say about it. This happened last night on the Fox News channel with Shannon Bream, who, to her credit, uses a lot of audio from this program. I just have to observe that. I've noticed it, and we are appreciative. Anyway, this was in the segment she introduced and played a clip of me talking about the impact of the primary elections and Kennedy's retirement, coming midterm elections all rolled into one.
Conservatives like Rush Limbaugh think this tilts in the president's favor.
So let's review. Supreme Court has been clawing back freedom for the American people at breakneck speed. Close calls, but it doesn't matter. A win is a win at the court. Trump-endorsed candidates winning on the Republican side. Bernie Sanders, socialist communists winning in key places on the Democrat side. And that's good for us because communist socialists are nowhere near the majority of the country. Now, they are Democrats, and they're going to get some additional Democrat votes, but this is going to split the Democrat Party. Mark my words going forward. And whenever you see the media start writing about unease and upset in the Democrat Party, understand that it's much worse than even they're writing. They don't want to write about that stuff at all. But they are. And you know, Pelosi, she had a funny reaction. She had a press conference yesterday, and she was asked about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez ousting her waiting in second command to become Speaker Joe Crowley. And Pelosi, yes, she's just a young girl. You know, it's just one district doesn't mean anything. You know, don't lose your minds here. Keep everything in perspective. It's just one seat. It really doesn't matter. We're Democrats. We're all in this together. It doesn't matter. She get really, really frustrated over this. Do you know that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez only had one story about her campaign in the New York Times? The New York Times totally missed the existence of this woman. And you know how we know this? Because the former executive editor of this place, Jill Abramson, has just written a scathing piece about the Times, about how they're getting lazy and they're missing everything and they're letting a bunch of things go. And what she means is they're not noticing enough what the communists in America are doing. Well, that's what it is. I mean, they're all over the collusion story and they're all over the obstruction story, but they missed this. They really missed this whole... I mean, the polling data had this clown Crowley up by 15 points. They missed her candidacy. They weren't even thrilled about it, and it's in their backyard. Queens, it's in their backyard, and they missed it. They had one story about this. Now this woman, by the way, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is saying, yeah, but I want to be el presidente. She's going to be president. She says, that's what this is all about. Pelosi, this one little seat, it doesn't matter. We have all demographics. We have all ages. We have all kinds of mixtures here in our party. You're making a big deal over nothing. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, when she hears that, a big deal about nothing, believe me, the Democrats are headed for some rough times ahead. Last night on, let's see, this is a Shannon Bream show. She had Larry O'Connor, who was on WMAL in Washington on. Also, she played the soundbite you just heard of me. And she said, talk about the impact of Kennedy's retirement. Sounds like Mitch McConnell wants to get his replacement confirmed before the fall elections and before the Supreme Court term starts. who does this motivate to get out and vote? Because if the seat's already locked down, what motivation does the right have to go out and vote?
This is easy. First of all, Rush Limbaugh is right. Rush Limbaugh is always right. He was right about this. He absolutely was. I just finished reading Selena Zito's great book, The Great Revolt, and she interviews all of these voters in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, who voted for Barack Obama. And one of the prime reasons they went for Donald Trump, even though they were against him on a lot of the things, was that seat. So I think it's going to motivate those voters.
Right, but the question was, what if, and frankly, I would love to see this, but I wait with bated breath for it. But if Trump's nominee is confirmed before the fall elections, his point or her question was, does this mean Trump voters get what they want and don't show up to vote? Would it be better for Trump to wait until after the election to make the nomination and then start the confirmation hearings? And, you know, that's kind of a toss-up. I don't think so. I think Trump voters are far more sophisticated than any and understanding their importance. I don't think they're traditional. You know, the traditional way of looking at politics, you can't plug Trump into that. Now, one of the traditions is, well, yeah, the party in power, their voters kind of, they've already won. They won 2 years ago. They're simply not as excited. They're not as enthused. The out-of-power party, that's the party that you got to look out for. They've got all the energy. They've got all the motivation. In the primaries that have happened, Republicans are showing up in greater numbers than Republicans. But again, that's an old formula that applied for years and years and years when the establishment was running thing and it was establishment candidates. But this is all brand new. And Trump's voters are highly sophisticated, and they understand the need to continue the enthusiasm and the involvement. The idea that Trump voters are going to take an election off because they've run out of... And did you see that rally last night? Where was it? Fargo, South Dakota? I'll say it again. There isn't a politician in America who could draw a crowd like that. There's not a politician and can hold a crowd. Those people did not want to leave last night. They wanted Trump to go on and on and on. And if you watched it, you saw Donald Trump include them as he talked about himself and his successes. They were as much a part of it, in his view, as he is. They're not going anywhere. They're not going to take an election off. This is just the Democrats and the drive-bys of political establishment trying to comfort themselves that things are going to start going their way, as they usually always do. But until they understand that this is a whole new dynamic, they're going to continue to be surprised daily over the new things happening in politics that they just think can't happen. Back in a second. I am continually surprised at the level of ignorance among the so-called educated class in Washington, D.C., particularly the media, about how, quote, unquote, our democracy works. So these people, by the way, greetings and welcome back. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. The liberals want the Supreme Court to be ruled by the political beliefs of the justices, not the law. And that's what is being imperiled here with the resignation of Anthony. In fact, change up in the soundbite order. Grab soundbite number 7, just for the fun of it. We have a leaked conference call, Democrat National Committee conference call, Donna Brazile calling others at the DNC to announce the Kennedy retirement. And I want you to hear it. Here it is.
Justice Anthony Kennedy has just announced that he's retiring. All the more reason. Yes, he just announced this. Oh, my God. This is not good news.
As Donna Brazile, you go, oh my God, oh no. So they're panicking out there. But the idea that Mueller's findings would eventually go to the Supreme Court would have nothing to do with Mueller's findings, would have nothing to do with the House impeachment or any Senate trial. These reporters don't know anything. The Supreme Court and a Trump nominee will have nothing to say about whatever Mueller produces. The way the Mueller report is going to happen, according to regulations, when Mueller finishes his investigation, he will then write the exhaustive report. When Ken Starr did his, it was called the Starr Report. And everybody zeroed in on the Lewinsky section to find out what really happened. It was like reading a smut novel. So this will be the Mueller report. It gets presented to Rosenstein. And then Rosenstein decides what to do with it. Release it to Congress, make it public, what have you. And then, but that's it. Now, if there are indictments, if there are recommendations for indictments, if there's any of that stuff in it, then it's dealt with within the legal system. The Supreme Court never has a thing to say about it unless one of the cases, if there's an indictment, if one of those cases would ever end up on appeal to court, they would take it. But the Supreme Court will have absolutely nothing to do with what Mueller says. And this is just the media trying to convince people that Trump's not qualified. My prediction, Trump's not qualified to make an appointment. He might be found guilty. We can't have a guy appointing a justice Supreme Court. Why, that justice would be favorably disposed to exonerate Trump. The justice that he nominates will never have a thing to say about any Mueller investigation. They're just trying to do anything they can to get people to support the idea that Trump should not make his nomination. The idea that Trump should delay this nomination until after the midterms is folly. It is absurd, and it's crazy. If the nominee is not confirmed before these midterm elections, then the Democrats are not going to let this nomination be confirmed until the next Congress, if ever. And they haven't forgotten about what happened to Merrick Garland. But the answer to that is exactly what I said. Barack Obama nominated the least qualified person ever to be in a court, Elena Kagan, during a midterm election year, and she was confirmed. And everybody says they love precedent. Well, there you go. I asked this a little bit earlier today. Are liberals immune from the cry wolf syndrome? Does warning fatigue ever set in? These people get a tsunami warning like every other day from their puppet masters in the media, and they go into full panic attack. Do you realize to be a liberal is to be in constant panic mode, such as these people on that Donna Brazil DNC conference call? And every week, it's something new. It's Russia collusion. It's an presidential tweet. Trump got more ice cream at dessert than he gives his guests. Remember that one. Where's Melania? Did you see Melania's jacket? It never ends. Every week, sometimes twice a week, is a brand new tsunami. And this one, the Kennedy retirement, has PTSD potential. Now imagine, Ruth Buzzy Ginsburg is 85. We're talking law of averages here. If they're having this conniption fit over Anthony Kennedy, can you imagine when the day comes? Because, the odds are that Trump is going to get another opening on the court. At what point will their reservoir expire? But more importantly, at what point will an increasing number of the American people grow tired of the tsunamis that they create, the left? I have been expecting that, hoping for that for a long time, and I think we may be at the beginning of even seeing that. Time will tell. Okay, congressional hearing today. A committee, House Judiciary Committee hearing on Justice Department, the report about Hillary Clinton's email investigation, the IG report. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein testified. So did Christopher Wray, the FBI director. And Ron DeSantis, who is running for governor of Florida. We want to start with this. DeSantis asked Rosenstein about his involvement in the investigation.
They talk about the Mueller investigation. It's really the Rosenstein investigation. You appointed Mueller, you're supervising Mueller, and it's supposedly about collusion between Trump's campaign in Russia and obstruction of justice. But you wrote the memo saying that Comey should be fired, and you signed the FISA extension for Carter Page. So my question is to you, it seems like you should be recused from this more so than Jeff Sessions, just because you were involved in making decisions affecting both prongs of this investigation. Why haven't you done that?
Congressman, I can assure you that it were appropriate for me to recuse. I'd be more than happy to do so and let somebody else handle this, but it's my responsibility to do it, and all I can tell you, sir,
then how do you have obstruction of justice possibility for a president exercising his powers to fire an FBI director that you said should be fired? And oh, by the way, the IG report makes it clear Jim Comey should have been fired. So why are we still doing this with the Mueller probe?
Sir, I am not commenting on what is under investigation by the Mueller probe, and to the best of my knowledge, neither is Mr. Mueller.
Mr. Mueller is commenting. Mr. Mueller went out there and said that the New York Times and a bunch of people are publishing things that aren't true. Mueller went out there and said that the pre-dawn raid into Manafort's house, they didn't beat down the door and they didn't pick the lock. And he got mad that the New York Times and the media leaked that. BS. Somebody leaked it to him. Mueller's just trying to get his handle on the leaks and make it look like his office has nothing to do with them. But who else would know what happened with that entry into Manafort's house? But DeSantis here is simply, it doesn't matter what Rosenstein's answers were. The question here was designed to get that information out there, because those are all legitimate questions. If it was now justifiable to fire Comey, then what the hell is this? Investigating Trump for obstruction for doing it. Now, Rosenstein, I think, is involved. He did not follow Justice Department regulations when he impaneled Mueller. He did not give him a crime to investigate. It was open-ended, and when people figured that out, he came back and wrote a memo and practically backdated it, which then spelled out specific areas for Mueller to investigate, which then includes everywhere Mueller has gone. But I don't think anybody doubts that the purpose of this investigation from the moment it began, before it began, is to get Donald Trump. Up next is Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz, a Republican from Florida, is asking Rosenstein about the FISA warrant.
Did you read the FISA application before you signed it?
I'm not going to comment about any FISA application.
So you won't say to this committee whether or not you even read the document you signed that authorized spying on people associated with the Trump campaign?
Well, I dispute your characterization of what that FISA is about, sir.
Did you read it or did you not read it?
I'll be happy to review. I'll be happy to discuss the details with you. But as I told you, sir.
Did Peter Strzok brief you on it?
No.
Did Lisa Page brief you on it?
No.
Did Sally Moyer brief you on it?
Now, let me explain the process, if I may.
Well, did Tricia Anderson brief you on it?
No FBI personnel briefed me on it. The process, sir, is that these FISA applications and renewals first come up through the FBI chain of command. They are sworn under oath by a career federal agent. We sit down with a team of attorneys from the Department of Justice, all of whom review that, provide a briefing for us about what's in it. And, sir, I've reviewed that one in some detail. And I can tell you, sir, that the information that's public about that doesn't match with my understanding of the one that I signed.
Okay, now this is interesting, because what's being discussed here is the Steele dossier, the Golden Shower story. It's a fake story. It's a fake dossier. It was Hillary Clinton opposition research that was passed off as legitimate intelligence collected by intelligence agents all over the world. And that was to give it credibility. And it was used to get a FISA warrant. And what Gaetz is asking here, did you know that? Are you aware that they misled the FISA court? And of course, Rosenstein's not going to say anything in this hearing. Rosenstein's not going to answer anything. And what would the thing these congressmen are up against is, look, I have to continue to remind you, the FBI is refusing to release specific documents requested by congressional committees. The committees are entitled to them. They've been asking for certain things since last August. The committee is being stonewalled by Rosenstein and others in the FBI for the usual, well, it's an ongoing investigation, classified information can't, doesn't matter, we're Congress. You're not. We're entitled to see it. One of the things they want to see is, for example, when did you hire these informants, and when did you embed them in the Trump campaign? This is something that that Devin Nunes has been seeking for about a month now, and he's being stonewalled at every request. He also wants to know what was the actual beginning of this investigation. We now know that it wasn't the dossier. We now know it wasn't Papadopoulos blabbing about the Russians having Hillary emails. So what was it? Rosenstein, Wray are not answering. Donald Trump could make them answer. Donald Trump could order everything Congress wants released this afternoon, and Rosenstein et al. Could not stop it. I don't know that they would. I mean, they might try to stonewall even Trump, but he could order all of this stuff released. Now, the Trump people say that he's not doing this because it would appear that he is obstructing the investigation, that Trump is ordering the release of information that could be very damaging to him, or it could be exculpatory. So the question that these guys are really asking themselves, and they're asking Rosenstein for the public consumption, what they really want to know is, why is Trump not releasing this stuff? Why is Trump not authorizing it to be released? And we've dealt with that answer. I think Trump has assessed a political advantage to having it appear that he is this lone outsider up against this massive establishment cabal trying to destroy him. That would be a political calculation. Here's Trey Gowdy, and he just told Rosenstein off here in this soundbite, demanding to see the evidence. What the hell is it? What are you doing up there? Why won't you tell us? Here it is.
He was talking about impeachment within 3 days of special counsel Mueller being appointed. 3 days. That's even quicker than MSNBC and the Democrats were talking about impeaching. Within 3 days. The lead FBI agent is talking about impeaching the president. So this is where we are. More than 60 Democrats have already voted to proceed with impeachment before Bob Mueller has found a single solitary damn thing. We've seen the bias. We need to see the evidence. If you have evidence of wrongdoing by any member of the Trump campaign, present it to the damn grand jury. If you have evidence that this president acted inappropriately, present it to the American people.
He went on to say, wrap it the hell up. They don't want to wrap it up for a host of reasons. Here's Rosenstein replying.
I certainly share your views about those text messages, and nobody is more offended than I about what's reflected in those messages. With regard to the investigation, I've heard suggestions that we should just close the investigation. I think the best thing we can do is finish it appropriately and reach a conclusion. And I certainly agree with you, sir, that people should not jump to conclusions without seeing the evidence.
This guy doesn't say diddly squat to anything. Now, Snerdley, if this depresses you, I can understand it, because this guy, Rosenstein, he's not going to ever answer a single thing. He doesn't know any. He's Inspector Clouseau here, and he's happy to be. We'll be back after this. The next half hour, and I'm going to go through a whole bunch of them. I appreciate that you have been on hold for this long. So, Jim Jordan from Ohio accused Rosenstein of withholding information. Rosenstein got on his high horse about that. Jordan said, why did you hide the fact that Strzok and Judge Contreras were friends? FISA judge. Why did you redact that in the document you gave to us? Judge Contreras is kind of important, a FISA court judge. More importantly, the judge that heard Mike Flynn's case. Why did you try to hide that from us?
I am the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, okay? I'm not the person doing the redacting. My job is to make sure that we respond to your concerns. We have, sir. Now, I've appointed Mr. Lausch, who is managing that production. And my understanding is it's actually going very well.
Again, I think the House of Representatives is going to say otherwise.
But your use of this to attack me personally.
Why did you? It's not wrong. It's not personal. We just want the information.
Okay, so Rosenstein, I'm not doing the redacting. All I do is run the department. I don't know what's going on here. I employed Clouseau. Clouseau's over there doing the redacting. I think it's going pretty damn well, Congressman. Screw you. And it's pretty damn well you won't give us what we want. Well, I don't mean this is personal attacks on me. We're doing a damn good job up here trying to stonewall you. I mean, give you what you want. And then Jordan's not having any of it. He continued to bore in like this.
Why'd you tell Peter Strzok not to answer our questions yesterday? When I asked Peter Strzok if he'd ever communicated with Glenn Simpson, he gave us the answer he gave us dozens of times. On advice of FBI counsel, I can't answer that question. Why couldn't he answer that question?
Mr. Jordan, I appreciate your sincere concerns, but I didn't give Peter Strzok any instructions. If there was some problem with the instructions he had, I'll be happy to look into it. When you find some problem with a production or with questions, it doesn't mean that I'm personally trying to conceal something from you. It means we're running an organization that's trying to follow the rules.
Why couldn't he answer that question?
Mr. Jordan, I appreciate you're saying it isn't personal. Sometimes it feels that way. How do I know, sir? I mean, you interviewed Mr. Strzok. I didn't, so I can't
Works for you. Doesn't work for us.
There are 115,000 people who work for me.
Right, and I don't know a thing any of them are doing. I'm just a guy sitting here. I don't know what they're doing. I'm not doing the redacting. I'm not talking to lawyers. I haven't told anybody to stonewall you. I don't know what Strzok is telling you, and I don't know what Strzok isn't telling you. I don't know anything. I just run the department. Don't you understand how this bureaucracy works? The people in charge of things don't know diddly squat, Congressman. You mean to tell me you have no power over them? I'm not in charge of it, Congressman. I'm just the guy trying to give you what you wanted. By God, I think we're doing a pretty damn good job of it. And I don't like the way you're personally attacking me. I'm not personally attacking you. I want to know why you are telling Strzok to stonewall. I'm not telling Strzok anything. I don't control anything. I'm the deputy AG. And we're supposed to accept this. I run the department. I got 115,000 people to work for me. You think I know what every one of them are doing? I couldn't begin to tell you. So it is clear that Rosenstein is absolving himself of any involvement or responsibility, and then at the same time claiming that everything's peachy. Now, some might theorize that this is strategic. Why is Rosenstein doing it? Have you heard the left and the drive-by saying, if Trump fires Rosenstein, that's impeachable? He can't fire. Of course, Trump can fire anybody anytime he wants, and he doesn't need a reason. Now, some may think that Rosenstein is trying to goad Trump into firing him, so that it can trigger some kind of new investigation into Trump. If that's the case, Trump isn't going to fall for it, I don't think. Your phone calls are coming up next. Thank you for your patience. We head to the phones. We're going to start in Grand Rapids. This is Lon. Great to have you, Lon. How you doing?
Thank you, sir. I'm doing well. It's a pleasure to speak to you. I'll get right to my point. Mr. Sternly was very stern. It just amazes me that
just a second. You said two things. You said Mr. Snerdley was very stern in telling you to get to your point.
Yes, sir.
Was he mean? Was he rude?
Oh, no, sir. He was firm but fair.
Okay. Secondly, what would you have talked about had you not gotten to your point?
Oh, I don't know. We could have talked about all kinds of things, but I like my point. So I guess
each of them has but each of those things you want to talk about has a point. So I mean, you sure. Could have gone anywhere. You just were afraid of being in violation of Mr. Snerdley's sternness. But see,
I'm afraid of violating the agreement I made with Mr. Snerdley. I promised him I would do what he asked, and
here's the thing:
I did it.
Once you begin talking with me, Mr. Sternley's responsibility for you ends.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, so, I mean, there's nothing he can do to you. Maybe he can disconnect the call. I don't know. I don't know what secret systems they have in there, but that wouldn't happen. Okay, so your point is?
Yes, sir. It just amazes me that being under an investigation suddenly precludes.
Did his connection? Are you kidding me? Did we lose this? Did you hang up on this guy? Did you disconnect the call? In a moment of peak, is this how you choose to behave today? I cannot believe. Lon, if you're out there, believe me, I'm like Rosenstein. I have no idea what happened here. I didn't do it. And I hope you don't take this personally. There's a lot of people working for me, and I can't keep track of all of them. Hell, I can't see 90% of them when I'm out here in L.A. What was he, Mr. Snerdley, what was his point going to be? Let's at least get his point addressed. What was he going to ask me? Okay, he had a good point. Nobody complained when Hillary was under investigation, when she was running for president. Now they want to claim that Trump can't do anything because he's under investigation. It's a good point, except, Lon, remember something. The FBI cleared Hillary Clinton on the 5th of July. Comey went out there and said he listed every crime she committed, and there's a whole bunch of them. And then he said, but we couldn't find where she intended to use a fake server. We couldn't find where she intended to send secret classified stuff to President Obama. And he replied, we couldn't find where she intended for any of this, and therefore no reasonable prosecutor, and that's all we have here are reasonable prosecutors, would ever charge her. And so we're not. Well, we learned that the Hillary Clinton case had been dealt with. She'd been exonerated even before her interview. So in truth, she wasn't under investigation, at least not after July 5th. But it still is a good point. Even if, let's say this, even if Comey had not done the July 5th presser, and even if he had not exonerated, if she had remained under investigation, there wouldn't have been a soul of the Democrat Party saying that she should be disqualified and we should go get Crazy Bernie. There wouldn't have been a soul. So your point about them being hypocrites is valid. The thing about that is that hypocrisy never seems to attach to these people. It never punishes them. So it's nice to note it, but it never has any practical impact. Jay in DeKalb, Illinois, you're next. It's great to have you here. Hello.
Thanks, Rich. Major dose to you, sir. I wanted to get your opinion on, I've listened to some of the liberal radio this morning, just enjoying their meltdowns. And they're going on and on about how the new justice is going to turn over Roe v. Wade. And one person said he was going to turn over Brown versus the Board of Education. Do you feel, I know, it's just ridiculous. Do you feel like that they're trying to stir real physical attacks? Just to go out and really attack, just like the guy did at the softball practice last year. Look at what Waters had said, about accost these people at every turn.
Now, that's your latter part of that question really makes this intriguing. My first answer to you is that this is real. They are genuinely upset. When you hear this guy say, my God, they're going to overturn Roe versus Wade and Brown versus Board of Education. They are living that fear. They're not trying to incite people other than each other, but they're really trying to just send signals of recognition to each other. They believe all of this. Look, all of this stuff exists because Roe versus Wade, for example. Here's the truth of it, folks. Roe versus Wade is the law of the land because of a Supreme Court decision, not because the elected representatives of the people have voted on it. Have you ever noticed that abortion is not anywhere near the cultural or political issue in the UK that it is here? You know why? They voted on it in the UK. In the House of Commons, they voted on it. The representatives of the people there had their debates, became the law of the land. This was the result of a Supreme Court decision. A bunch of people wearing black robes decided that killing a baby in a womb is constitutional. Well, there's a lot of people say, it isn't in there, Judge. There's nowhere in the Constitution says that you can take the life of a baby in a womb. I don't care how you can structure it as a woman's right to choose. None of that's in there. So the issue remains quite controversial. The left knows this. They're running around scared to death that this could be overturned on the grounds that it's unconstitutional. All you need is a different court makeup, somebody to bring the case back, and if another court theoretically could find that the previous ruling was unconstitutional. Not that And if that happens, the ruling will not be specifically about abortion. It'll be about the Constitution, which is what this should be about in the first place. The Constitution does not say that only women can decide what to do with their body. I mean, we have laws against prostitution. We have laws against any number of things that only women can do. To say that women should have the right to do with their body whatever they want has been a popularly accepted cultural thing, but it's nowhere in the Constitution. So if a new court with a majority of justices who think the 73 ruling should be vacated because it's unconstitutional should happen, the left is going to think the court has come along and made abortion illegal, which is not what the ruling will be. But they know it's tenuous precisely because of what I just said. It hangs in the balance. They've invested all of this in having a majority of judges on a court. And whenever that majority is threatened, then they get panicked. Their panic is real here. Now, the second part of your question, you talked about Scalise getting shot at Republican baseball practice and Maxine Waters. Is all of this hysteria, is it designed to create similar actions against Republicans and Trump and whoever in order to intimidate Republicans from not changing what liberals consider to be established constitutional law? Maybe. I mean, frankly, I don't think they would have to try to do that. We've already got the evidence that they're inspiring people to do that. I mean, the guy did shoot Steve Scalise. He shot up at a bunch of Republicans at that baseball practice. Why? Who inspired him to do that? Where did he get the idea? What panicked him so much he thought he had to do that? That restaurant owner at the Red Hen that sees Sarah Sanders in there and they panic. Oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God. And they got to get her out of there. Where does this come from? And let's go back to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. 28-year-old millennial, dyed-in-the-wool Marxist, not progressive. And the Democrat Party is a little uneasy over this. I think, well, where did she learn this stuff? Yeah, she's from Puerto Rico and Puerto Rico's socialist, but where did she learn this stuff? This is the kind of stuff that's being taught in middle school now, in high school. Of course, it's being taught in college, maybe in her home, but this stuff is learned. Where is it being learned? These people are not organically this way. It's the result of deep impressions having been made, and the left is responsible for having made these impressions. The left is an entirely radical organization, and they exaggerate everything. They go overboard in order to make their points, and you get these young, impressionable skulls full of mush in a classroom hearing this stuff, and they soak it up, like this 28-year-old candidate in Queens has done. And now it's their problem to deal with as some of the chickens come home to roost. It's typical with all exaggeration. A lot of people exaggerate on purpose to make the point, to shock you, to make you really get it. But they don't intend you to take them literally all the time. Well, the problem is that these skulls full of mush lefts are taking all of these influencers literally and then some. And they're getting lost in all of it. So I don't think they need to come up with a strategy designed to make radical leftists violent. That is organically happening. And I do think it's going to continue because they've got no recourse. They don't trust votes. Whenever a vote goes against them is illegitimate. The only way these people think they can prevail is with the use of force. Intimidation. You have to back down. You have to give in and give up to let them have what they want. You have to not show up and vote, or you have to be so afraid of them that you'll not say what they don't want to hear. You won't go where they don't want you to go. You'll believe what they want you to believe, and you will love it. And if you don't, they're going to continue to try to intimidate you. But they're not interested in achieving this stuff by winning elections. That's icing on the cake if they can. But when they lose, look, they lost the presidential race. Look at them. It's illegitimate. It doesn't count. That was stolen from us. This is not the way it was supposed to be. Where does the mentality come from in 2004 that John Kerry actually won because of the exit polls? The votes were illegitimate. The exit polls were accurate. They believe this stuff. This has been one of the themes. I went to the Media Research Center annual gala. I was the keynote speaker last year's, and it was this year's, this spring, and they play clips of all the outrageous, hilarious, irresponsible, liberal quotes from TV, media, and everywhere, and everybody laughs themselves silly. So when I got out there to make my speech, I said, yeah, it is funny, but folks, they believe it. You got to understand they believe this stuff. They're not just flapping their gums. And as such, it makes them dangerous. You have to take this stuff seriously. I've learned over the course of this program, laughing at this stuff, someday you laugh at it thinking nobody could possibly believe this. And one day you wake up and you find out 30% of the country does. You think we're going insane. But the real problem is they cannot accept losing a duly constituted fair election. That already is illegitimate. They get what they want via the use of force. They maintain it via the use of force, intimidation, bullying, or what have you. Nothing I see is going to make them stop behaving like it. This is Jeffrey Toobin. Had a meltdown yesterday afternoon on CNN after the announcement of Justice Kennedy was announced.
You are going to see 20 states pass laws banning abortion outright. Just banning abortion because they know that there are now going to be 5 votes on the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. And abortion will be illegal in a significant part of the United States in 18 months. There is just no doubt about that. Roe v. Wade is doomed. It is gone because Donald Trump won the election and because he's going to have the chance to appoint 2 Supreme Court justices.
See this? It's over. It's already gone. How can it be this tenuous? How can something constitutional be this tenuous? Well, the answer is it isn't, and they know it. Roe versus Wade is doomed before we even have the nominee. What if Trump decides to nominate somebody who is pro-life or pro-choice? We don't know, folks. We don't know what the strategy is going to be here to get somebody confirmed. We really don't have any idea yet. The odds are it won't be somebody who's pro-choice, but we don't know. Susan Collins, who's a Republican vote that the Democrats are counting on opposing any Trump nominee, is saying, my number one requirement for, my number one requirement, she speaks very slow, is precedent. That's what a judge must respect precedent. That's code lingo for whoever comes up there better not want to tamper with Roe versus Wade. That's what she means by precedent. But yet, here's Toobin. It's over. It's over because a bunch of states out there are going to say it's illegal because they think the court will back them up. I'm telling you that if this ever does come up, if Roe versus Wade if it ever does appear before the Supreme Court again, it's going to be on the basis of whether or not the 1973 court ruling was constitutional, which is what the Supreme Court today says that it does. It's decided to make that role one of its primary purposes, all the way back in Marbury versus Madison. Now, there may be an abortion case that comes up on the sheer tenets of the medical practice itself and whether or not it's lawful or not. But I would think that the constitutionality of the 73 ruling would be what would have to be overturned. But I need to speak with legal beagles. That could be wrong, but that's just my instinct. What I find fascinating is they already think it's over. The left, it's over. And they can only think that if they know how tenuous it is. And it also must be that they know that it is not something a majority of the American people, a big majority, approve of. They've got to know that they're governing against the will of the American people on a lot of stuff. Rush Limbaugh here behind the golden EIB microphone. We're in Los Angeles. And the final big broadcast hour today here, 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program, and the email address lrushbo@eibnet.us. Okay, we have a little news here about the Democrat, Socialist, Marxist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who upset the white privileged dinosaur of the Democrat Party, Joe Crowley. The headline here is from the Daily Caller, which is Chatsworth Osborne Jr.'s website. He's now recused himself from it, by the way. That's Tucker Carlson. It's our affectionate name for him. Chatsworth Osborne Jr., Dobie Gillis show from way back. And it's a great website, by the way, but Tucker decided to recuse himself while he's hosting the 8 p.m. show on Fox. Headline, Socialist Darling Caught Celebrating Campaigning with Known Anti-Semite and Racist. Democratic Socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stunned the political world and rank-and-file Democrats by defeating incumbent white-privileged dinosaur Joe Crowley in Tuesday's New York primary. But one of her most enthusiastic campaigners, and a man who stood right behind her at her victory party, which is where every man should be now, behind a woman. And believe me, folks, the women's movement from behind, you'll love it. Anyway, this guy standing behind her, Thomas Lopez Pierre, is a known anti-Semite and racist. Lopez Pierre has regularly used slurs against Jewish and black New Yorkers in public forums and while running for office himself. While running for office in 2017, Lopez Pierre specifically campaigned on protecting tenants from, quote, greedy Jewish landlords. His own campaign website shows his rantings against greedy Jewish landlords. His campaign website applauds the arrest of greedy Jewish landlords and says that Jewish landlords are punishing black and Hispanic families. Again, this guy's name is Thomas Lopez Pierre. His Twitter bio says that he is protecting people from greedy Jewish landlords. It is a theme here. In May of 2018, that would be this year for those of you in Rio Linda, Lopez Pierre ranted against greedy Jewish landlords, saying Jesus should put them in hell. Just this month, Lopez Pierre tweeted about greedy Jewish landlords. Lopez Pierre also has tweeted about threatening white people and Jewish people with violence. Now, this ought to go over big in Queens. Don't you think? They got to eat this up in Queens. On his YouTube channel, Thomas Lopez Pierre, who is a #1 supporter of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, can be seen campaigning for Ocasio-Cortez. In a recent video, he's wearing an Ocasio-Cortez campaign shirt and declaring that he is campaigning against greedy landlords. The caption in the video reads, Thomas Lopez Pierre campaigning in the Bronx for Democrat congressional pro-tenant candidate Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. He posted a video of him smiling at her victory party as the candidate gives a speech about inclusion and tolerance. He's talking about greedy Jewish landlords. In 2013, when this guy was running for city council, he sent a racist, homophobic email to a black supporter of his opponent, Mark Levine. The supporter was named Brain Benjamin. Maybe that's Brian, and this is just a typo. But we'll go with what it says here. The supporter, Brain Benjamin, was called the N-word 5 times. A B-I-itch 6 times. Said he is a weak, little, short man who, well, I can't repeat this. Stephen Colbert would, but not me. But he does very bad things with white Jewish genitalia. Lopez Pierre also threatened Benjamin with violence. This is one of this babe's #1 supporters. Let's just see. Now, this is in the Daily Caller. This hasn't been in the New York Times. or anywhere else. Let's just see if something happens. I want to go back, folks, because this is confirmation of something that I instinctively intuited. When we first learned of the informant that the FBI had implanted in the Trump investigation, this collusion case, remember the name Stephen Halper. Stephen Halper was the guy that somehow found his way into the life of George Papadopoulos and had implanted with Papadopoulos, along with his buddy Joseph Mifsud, a professor from Malta, that the Russians had a whole bunch of Hillary Clinton emails. Well, this guy, Stephen Halper, has been a lecturer and professor at Cambridge, at Oxford. He's got some ties to Harvard, but he's big in MI6 and the CIA. MI6 is the UK version of the CIA. And then Mifsud, the Maltese professor. That's actually how he's identified in all these news stories. And I made the point, you're going all the way back to Kim Philby. Kim Philby was a Soviet spy working in British intelligence. He was eventually uncovered and fled and lived the rest of his life in Moscow in a very palatial estate. I made the observation that all of this, all of these spies and all of these implants and all of these people working with the FBI come from academe. They come from the equivalent of the Ivy League in the UK, which would be Oxford and Cambridge, and they come from Harvard and Yale here. And sure enough, Stephen Halper was a lecturer at Harvard and has had connections there. Well, there was a story today in a small paper called the Taunton Daily Gazette in Massachusetts by Dr. Shiva Ayadurai. And he is running for office. He is an accredited academic himself. He's got 4 degrees from MIT, including a PhD, and he's running for the United States Senate as an independent. And his piece is, "It's time to take back Harvard," exposing the truth about Harvard and so forth. And it's a really, really good piece that details how Harvard and Yale and all of these Ivy League institutions prepare people for positions of power and authority in what we're calling the establishment, the deep state, ruling class, or whatever. Let me give you a full quote from his piece. "However, today, the same people who control education at Harvard also dominate Wall Street. They write the nation's laws. They operate global behemoths like Monsanto. They are a singular, cohesive community who funnel vast sums of money to themselves. They write self-serving policies. They control judicial appointments. They own the media. They grant taxpayer money to nonprofits while creating monopolies from tax cuts, bailouts, and venture funding. And they do all of this, and they work with intelligence agencies that illegally surveil innocent Americans. To add insult to injury, Harvard faculty generate propaganda, academic, peer-reviewed papers that claim their method of running the world is the best while trampling our political and free speech rights." Another full quote is, "Almost every problem in the world, be it corruption, an economic crash, mass poverty, or civil strife, can be traced back to experts at Harvard." And the reason the piece appealed to me is because I think it's true. I think Harvard and Yale. Take a look. I just, for the sake of it, I will admit something. I'm watching Rosenstein today. We played the sound bites of Rosenstein. And I wanted to find out if Rosenstein's worked anywhere in the private sector. I wanted to find out, if I could, what Rosenstein's net worth is. I'll tell you why. It's not because I used that to judge by any stretch of the imagination. But this guy has degrees from Wharton. He's got degrees from Harvard. He's right there from Harvard. He's got degrees from all over the place. And as best I could tell, he has only worked in government, which means he's never made more than a couple $100,000 a year, which to people like this, folks, is peanuts. $200,000 a year in this crowd doesn't get you noticed, except in this crowd it does. And he's got and education and degrees, and he's not alone. I just picked him because he's in the news here. I'm not zeroing in on Rosenstein for any particular reason here, just that he was on my mind. You know, wealth is a great equalizer, and wealth allows people to spend a lot of time on things that are not related to earning a living. Most people have to spend all of their serious time earning a living, and your avocational time, your vacation time, hobby time is very, very limited. Well, wealth affords you the opportunity to dibble and dabble in a whole bunch of stuff and not have to, quote unquote, go to work every day. And it's one of the things that is also very common with people that come from this lineage. They know each other, they network with each other, and they end up, even though they've never earned a lot of money, when you find their net worth statement, you find it's overflowing, even though they've never had jobs outside government. Members of the House and Senate show up in Washington with nothing, and they retire after a few years, and they're millionaires. Now, how did this happen? This is what this guy writing the story is talking about. But it is a club. You know, it is, and there is an official training for how to be in the United States government. And it does come from the Ivy League. But it doesn't stop at the government. How to be and how to work and how to at Wall Street. Now, of course, this is what education is supposed to do. It's supposed to enable you to excel at things. But this is more than that. This is while you're learning how to excel, you're also being groomed and taught how to fit in and how to be part of a very, very, in terms of the population, small group of people in whom the vast majority of power in the country is vested. And is this group of people that's out of their minds over Donald Trump. This group, what has happened with this is not possible. In their world, this is not possible. Even though Trump went to Wharton, you know, Trump's got an Ivy League pedigree, but he's not one of them. And this is not supposed to happen. He's not supposed to be able, nobody is, to come in and get elected, and then after only, less than 2 years, show how ineffective these people are at supposedly leading the country, representing America, doing the best for America. Trump is exposing a lot of things that nobody was supposed to ever see. And this is why they have to get rid of him. It's why they have to do whatever they can to discredit him and to invalidate him with everything that he does. And it's why they go after him on the basis that he's rude and crude and unsophisticated, because those are key ingredients and requirements for admission into this club. And it extends to the same kind of people in the UK. These are the people running the European Union. These are the people at the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They're all in this. And I was glad to see this piece because it confirmed my instincts about it. No. I'm not coming at this from a standpoint of jealousy or any of that. No. I'm just documenting it. This is I think a demonstrated thing. This guy that wrote the piece, he actually makes mention of the fact that Harvard could be sued for racketeering, given what they produce and how people are trained and educated. And I don't doubt any of that for Bennett. He says they do all of this and they work with intelligence agencies that illegally surveil innocent Americans. To add insult to injury, Harvard faculty generate propaganda, academic peer-reviewed papers. In short, Harvard is the alpha and omega of the military-industrial academic complex, the deep state. And almost every problem in the world, be it corruption, an economic crash, mass poverty, civil strife, can be traced back to experts at Harvard. And he writes here, I believe Harvard needs to be investigated for racketeering. Now, that's never going to happen. And this may not be news to you. I was just excited to see it because it confirmed yet again my unassailable instincts about things. But this is the root even of the so-called conservative never-Trumpers. There's also a piece in the stack today by a guy who has done a little informal survey, Not one national newspaper, such as USA Today, New York Times, Washington Post, given the internet, it's national. There isn't one, not a single pro-Trump columnist. Not a single one. Plenty of conservatives, but every damned one of them hates Trump. George Will, Ross Douthat, David Brooks, Brett Stevens, Washington Post, New York Times, to a man, they despise Trump. Even while watching everything they've devoted their lives to supposedly being implemented as policy, they can't stand it that Trump is the one doing it. And there's genuine hatred. So these people are all unified, they're all together, and the never-Trumpers on the so-called Republican conservative side are part of the cabal as well. And they do think of themselves as special and a cut above intellectually in terms of sophistication and all this. And Trump is just continuing to drive them increasingly batty. Brief timeout. Sit tight. Back with much more after this. Foxconn is the Taiwanese company that assembles iPhones in both mainland China and India and a number of other places. And they're opening a plant in Wisconsin. 13,000 jobs will be created. I think they're going to make LCD screens for any number of sized, like TV sets and iPad size. I don't think they got much to do with iPhone production there. But Trump just talked about how brilliant a guy Scott Walker is. And Scott Walker said this would have never happened. This is what it is. Foxconn, nobody would have ever come to Wisconsin to open this plant, 13,000 new jobs, if it weren't for Donald Trump. And that is undeniably true. So much of what's happened in the country had not happened before in the modern era, recent years. Trump's making it happen. By the way, this guy with all these insulting things about Jewish landlords and so forth that supports Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sounds like she's got her own version of Reverend Wright out there. Shouldn't she have to denounce this guy? Let me get to the phones quickly in Leroy, Michigan. This is John. I'm glad you waited, sir. You're up next. Hello.
Hello, Rush. Glad to talk to you today.
Thank you, sir. Me too.
I think the precedent's already been set for a Supreme Court justice to be nominated by a president being investigated by special counsel, and that was by the gift that keeps giving, the Clintons. He nominated Justice Breyer a couple of months after the special counsel was appointed to investigate Whitewater.
You know, I had forgotten that, but you're right.
The original one, Fisk, who was later changed to Ken Starr. But yeah, the precedent's already been set. So, and he was actually impeached.
Yes, he was. He, of course, was not convicted, but he was impeached. Yeah, it's a good point. Okay, John, I appreciate that. Look, everything the Democrats are going to use to try to claim that Trump is not qualified to make this appointment, it's going to bomb out, but they're going to try to use it to generate, I think, donations as much as anything. They've lost, folks, they have lost so much union money with this Supreme Court decision yesterday, and it's being buried by all of the news subsequent to that decision. But they have lost access to millions and millions of dollars that they're going to have to recoup somewhere. And a lot of this bloviating is, I think, aimed at creating panic that will result in people donating to whatever the cause is here. Hang on, much more when we get back. The anti-Semite, Thomas Lopez Pierre, tweeted that this guy Lopez Pierre has been showing up unwanted in campaigns for years, frequently jumps into pictures with people who don't know who he is. Let's give Ocasio-Cortez a chance to denounce him and his brazen anti-Semitism before jumping to conclusions. And right on schedule, here comes Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Thank you for this opportunity and your graciousness here. I have no idea who this guy is. Hundreds of people walked into the hall, open to public last night. I absolutely denounce any such bigoted and reprehensible statements. So bye-bye Lopez Pierre, at least publicly. The home security business got a lot of fancy terms to try to lure you in, to try to scare you, like home invasions. to define a break-in or a robbery or burglary. But a break-in is just that. Somebody breaking something to get into your home, to steal your stuff, or to plant surveillance equipment or what have you. And 2/3 of the time, that happens right about now, in the middle of the day, when you're not likely to be at home. No bad guy wants to bump into anybody when they're making off with your most precious items. That's why they seldom show up when you're at home at night in bed. That only happens on TV. In real life, the burglars and the bad guys show up when they think you're not there. They want to get in, get it, and get out without being detected. So you having the right home security system from Simply Safe Home Security is going to secure your home when you're not there to protect it. Now, Simply Safe is innovating. And innovation sometimes makes things smaller. It makes them simpler. It takes the same job, the same tasks, and boils them down to their essence using the latest technology. And that instance can make it look like, well, it's smaller, doesn't have as much oomph to it, which is not the case. Has just as much oomph, but doesn't cost nearly as much and doesn't require nearly as many people. The first thing you won't have to have is a site survey. There won't be some guy coming out, walking through your house, making notes, telling you where your vulnerable points are and where you need this and where you need that. You decide that. You know where the doors and windows are. You know where the place to put a camera is if you want one, and you know where to put motion detectors. You do this yourself. And you don't need somebody to come out and run a bunch of wires to put all this stuff in because there aren't any wires. These sensors connect to the base station, wherever you put that, via Wi-Fi. So nobody can cut your wires and interrupt your security system. You can put the sensors on doors and windows as simply as peeling stickum off the back and sticking them on there. It's that simple. Then that base station uses cellular to connect to the local police department, fire department, if you want it. It's $14.99 a month, no contract, if you want it. Every Simply Safe system is built to operate perfectly without wires. They're using new technology with Wi-Fi and cell signals to connect all the components to protect your house. And millions of Americans are now using a Simply Safe system to protect themselves and their homes. You can put it in an apartment. You can put it, if you live in a shopping cart, you could probably get a couple sensors and secure your shopping cart. Certainly an HD camera. I mean, people live in any number of places. In California, what is the median price for a house now? $2.5 million, 907 what? Million? Seven? That's median or average? Or whatever. For $2 million in California, you get a shack, a starter shack, depending on where in California. But you could put a Simply Safe system in a condo. It doesn't. You don't have to have a full-fledged home, meaning house. So go online, simplysafeusa.com. Do this for yourself. That's how you buy the system online at simplysafeusa.com. There's a 60-day money-back guarantee, free shipping as well. So 2 months to use it and decide whether or not you like it. And if you don't, you'll get all your money back when you send it back. You won't send it back. Trust me. You get an app. If you sign up for the monitor, you'll get an app on the phone where you can arm the system, monitor the cameras, disarm the system, have total control over it. It's not intimidating in the least. SimplySafeUSA.com. Here's Bernadette in Akron. I'm glad you waited. You're next, and it's great to have you with us today. How are you?
I'm fine, Rush. It's a real pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
You alluded to it in the first hour about the job of the Supreme Court. For as long as I remember, it's been taught that Marbury versus Madison established the way they were going to do things. What were they doing before then?
Well, Marbury versus Madison judicial review, meaning the Supreme Court will sit in judgment of whether or not acts of Congress and legislation in Congress is constitutional. Look, it was a power grab, and this is what historically the three branches have always engaged in, the quest for power. And what's been fascinating to me is when Obama was president, the Democrats in the House and Senate willingly gave it up. They willingly surrendered power to Obama because they like authoritarianism. They like power invested in a singular individual. It's why they so love Fidel Castro. It's why they loved Hugo Chavez or Mao. One guy, all that power. The cases that the court handled beforehand were like, railroad versus land dealers. Cases like that appear before courts every day. The court decides which cases they take, and they, of course, reject the vast majority that they are requested to hear. But prior to that, it was the legal disputes that ran the gamut. The idea that the Supreme Court would become the final authority on the constitutionality of work by the U.S. Congress is what Marbury versus Madison established. And it was who can tell the court they can't do it? See, that would take another court with a new Chief Justice and a whole bunch of other cases to wipe that out. But they're not going to give up that kind of power. And it's just amazing how everybody's acquiesced to it.
Just falling in line.
Falling in line. Well, look, we can't ask God, so the Supreme Court's the closest we can get. Is that correct? Is that legal? Is that fair? Is that right? Is that constitutional? The left was happy to do this as long as they had the power to populate. Now that is being threatened. And it's got them very, very nervous. But they were more than happy for this singular authoritarian repository. And it's kind of like human nature. Deciding controversial things is controversial. Remember the base closings from back in the 80s? We decided we needed to downsize some of the military. And one of the ways to do it was downsizing military bases in the continental United States. Rather than Congress do it, they hired a bunch of ex-congressmen who missed the power and missed the perks. And they said, come on back, guys. We're going to make a blue ribbon panel here. We're going to put you on it, and you're going to decide which bases are closed. So that when you decide that a base is closed, say, up by Sacramento, the guy in that district can say, I didn't do it. The blue ribbon panel did it. So the history of Congress and individuals, too, being willing to pass off controversial decisions to others in order to escape any blame or accountability is as old as humanity itself is. So when Marbury versus Madison came along, it was controversial at first and remains controversial to some people, but it was accepted. It takes a lot of people off the hook, and it puts a bunch of people who never have to face voters on the hook. So they're not really on it. I mean, judges don't have to be elected. They don't have to campaign, so they can do whatever they want. You can't do anything about it. But the willingness with which members of Congress have given up power over the years has always amazed me. Because I remember when Reagan was president, Tip O'Neill ran the Democrats in the House of Representatives. It was a daily battle for power. The Republicans today, in both the House and Senate, marginally are not doing much to back up Trump. And in the first 6 to 9 months, they did nothing to back up Trump because they believed the Russian collusion story and thought that he was soon going to be history. And when they figured out that, hey, maybe he didn't do it, maybe Mueller doesn't have anything, then they got supportive and we got tax reform and so forth. But it's still basically Trump against Congress. This Congress is not so much trying to reap and reclaim power as they are not lending their power in unison to a president in their own party. But Trump is finding a way to overcome even that, too, which is continuing to frustrate those who are trying to find new ways to stop him.